So there's a small town in Saguache County, MapDot, blink and you missed it kind of place. It could soon get an enormous new landmark that no one would miss. And locals are furious.
A very large issue, and I learned this when knocking on doors in Villa Grove, campaigning. I wasn't aware that it had happened, but they recently were, it was passed that they were allowed to, a cell phone company was going to be allowed to put a 200-foot tower right on the edge of town, right along the landmark that the town is named after. It's called Villa Grove because there is a grove of trees that comes through in a watershed, and they're putting this. And a 200-foot tower is a very large tower, and this will define that town for forever into the future, from being a beautiful, picturesque small town with 360-degree views around it, which has always been that way, to something that looks more industrial, something that takes away from the quality of life of these people. And I believe there was over like 25 people that came to the commissioner board to tell the commissioners that this would break their hearts, it would tear their families apart, it would make them want to move away. And I believe in a town that it's not probably, I don't think there's more than 50 people that are official residents of that town, so it had to have been at least half of them. If half of the town is saying, please do not allow this to happen, that's enough. And that's where I get to, like, I'm wondering, well, what is the threshold for the board at this point, for when it is too much to push whatever they're pushing on a community? And is 3 people enough? Is 5 people enough? It used to be that maybe like 3 people came against something and it was enough to make the commissioners slow down or feel like they should represent and listen to the public. And now it seems to be more and more this unattainable goal of however many people are strong enough to fight them. And after looking into the actual building permit and what they allowed to happen, I have some real concerns. They're putting this tower on top of an old dump. On top of an old dump with toxic things that are down under the ground in the exact place where this tower is going. And they didn't do an environmental impact report. And they don't know that the soil can even hold this giant tower up. And digging into this ground for the earth to put in the foundations for this giant structure, because it is a structure, which they're trying to say in the commissioner board that this didn't qualify as a structure, this 200-foot tower. And ultimately what it comes down to is I don't think it was properly investigated, and I think it was pushed through too quickly. I believe that there should be an environmental impact report on what happens if we dig into the ground that's underneath this dump, that this dump is underneath. It's also, it should be noted that the watershed that comes along that town and that creek that feeds those trees, that is part of the Superfund site. If you follow that creek all the way up, it goes into Bonanza, where there was the mining that was going on that caused a Superfund site in that area of Bonanza. And we have spent, as citizens, millions of dollars cleaning up that creek and cleaning up that watershed. And it's been ongoing for years and years and years. And I do not understand why that same watershed that gets all of that attention would not have hit their radar for, well, what would it cause? What kind of damage can we cause if we're digging into ground that's a dump underneath and to the watershed that we're trying to protect so well? So those things are real big issues for me on the tower. I also believe I believe that a tower of that size should not be in a residential area. I believe that we should, as a community, come to know that, living right next to one of these very high-powered microwave towers is probably not good for anybody's health, any type of life's health. And I know for a long time the FCC has not allowed folks to argue the health concerns involved with these towers. But we are in new territory with the Chevron deference overruling, that the FCC ruling saying that you could not argue health risks is now up for challenge, because and allow a judge to actually look at the evidence. And if you do a little research, in 2020 there was a lot of evidence presented to a judge about the health risks of these towers, and the judge actually ruled that the FCC was not fully looking at the evidence provided. And then it went to appeal, and the Chevron deference took over, and unfortunately that wasn't able to go any farther. But I think that we are at a time when we need to be looking at these things and really understanding how they affect our community, the health of our children, and each other. Because I do believe that there are dangers involved with these things in residential areas right around houses. So that's one of the things that's really got me concerned.
Number three, I'm also against the 200-foot tower. When I was working back in New York, I was on the Planning and Zoning Commission for our community. We ran up against it. It's the same thing. It's huge, and it's demanded from outside. And the guy that was our building inspector threw up his hands because it was so impossible to fight against it. And because it's imposed on him from the outside. It's just like, oh, we're going to have it, period. Instead of sitting down and saying, well, isn't there a place up on the side of the hill that you could put that? It might cost us to put the road up to it, right? We don't want it over the jump, because I think those things have a heat source under it, because they work with electricity, right?
Usually there's a generator involved in it as well.
Generators get hot,
Absolutely.
and that could change the footprint. Under the footprint, that could change the stability of the structure sitting on garbage.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. And I know a lot about that. The force of these telecommunication companies and and the tower companies and their ability to force their way through local governments. But I do believe that we are in a new time where we're a little bit more equipped to fight these things, and they don't necessarily have the same powers that they did, and it's time for us to test the grounds. And it's funny that, and I'll use those words as a pun as well, but yeah, the water issue is huge, and it definitely takes a lot of legal help, and it is a very intense issue to truly understand the full depths of the water rights and what a community can do to protect itself. And it will take all of us coming together to be able to fight it. And I don't think it's a one-person fight, and it never could be. But at the same time, I think that our government is structured in a way that the people are in charge of it. And the more and I think that we just haven't really been exercising those rights as much as we could and as much as we should. And going into the future, that's what I'm looking at, is trying to be able to come up with these solutions and truly feel like we did something that was the best for our community and actually accomplishes what we set out to do.
There's a small town in Saguache County, MapDot, blink and you missed it kind of place. It could soon get an enormous new landmark that no one would miss. And locals are furious. There are about 30 people who live in Villa Grove year-round. It's on the road from Salida to Alamosa, one of my favorite drives in the state. Do it if you can. When our Mark Salinger went down to talk to people about the plans for the big old cell tower, a whole bunch of the town showed up to explain why they're against it.
Now, Our lawyer is waiting for all the evidence to come to him.
There's not usually a lot of news in Villa Grove.
Probably I'd say when the gas station, everything changed hands over across the street. Been a long time.
So we don't have a lot in Villa Grove. We have pottery, pot, a post office, and upholstery.
We don't want to go to court
Half
with
the people who lived here showed up to Paula Mays' house
a cell phone tower that's going in.
when she spread the word that we wanted to hear about the talk of the town.
So how do you guys feel about the cell phone tower?
And we don't need a 195-foot tower sitting there. We don't.
It'd be just over across the road.
It will change the face of our tiny little historic town.
Just unnecessary.
Intrusive.
Nefarious.
Ugly. Real ugly. Nothing pretty about it.
Saguache County commissioners paved the way this month for a 195-foot tall communications tower to be built in this field on the edge of town. The people who live here worry about how close it is to the homes they've lived in for much of their lives.
I haven't done enough studies to know if it's going to radiate me or anything, but if it is, I'm not for it.
Even our trees, which are the tallest things in town, are only about 60 foot.
Here we go. Marquita just called me.
Commissioners say it would help with cell phone service.
Everybody's got cell phone reception in this area. Many miles of it.
$49 Walmart phone, that works great. I get good reception. $49.
If it provides better cell service in the area, then I'm all for it.
Alan Yarmark runs the pottery shop in town. He's one of the few we found who actually wants the tower.
The people that are in direct line of sight don't want it. The people that aren't in the line of sight don't really care.
We just don't want it to be in town. We're not against the tower, just not in town.
Philip,
Anyhow,
Paula,
Take the tower outside of town.
and almost a third of the town are now suing the county commissioners to stop the tower from being built.
I've never sued anyone in my life, but I feel strongly enough about this that I stood up and will continue to stand up as long as it takes.
Like big headlines, fights like this aren't common here.
Nothing much has changed in my 44 years of being here, and that's part of the charm. That's the way we would like it to stay.
Paula and her neighbors are coming together to try and save the Villa Grove they've loved for decades.
Okay. God, I know.
So we wanted to talk to the Saguache County Commissioners about why they approved the cell phone tower, even after more than half the town showed up to commission meetings to speak out against it. Their attorney told me that they will not be speaking with us, Kyle.
So I'm thinking about Villa Grove, and the only thing
It's a small town.
that I really know about it is it's on a great drive down south, and that's where they moved that big country music festival.
Exactly. So I wanted to know, is that country music festival involved in all of this? Of course, the commissioners won't answer that. Everybody involved, everybody who spoke to us there in the town said, we don't think that the country music festival is a part of this, but think about it. This cell phone tower has a 5-mile radius. It's not very far. So if everybody in the town says we don't want it, there's not a whole lot of people further outside of town, 5 miles out. We still don't know exactly why the county commissioner said, yes, more cell phone service whether you like it or not.
That's really interesting. All right,
Yes.
stay on it, Mark. Thank you.